Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today we have Goes on a great topic, talking about software engineer's best friend, code reviewing. Without any further ado, let me go ahead and hand it over to Goes.
Thank you, Vinit, and thank you, Johnny, for organizing this event and giving me the opportunity to share my talk with the Android community in DC. It's a real pleasure to be giving this talk here. I wish I could give it in person, but the situation is what it is, so online will do. It's my first talk, so wish me good luck. Today's topic is code review, a software engineer's best friend. And this means we will spend the next 30 to 45 minutes talking about code reviews and why I think they're software engineer's best friend. Before I jump into the details of the talk, I would like to take a minute and tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for 10 years already. I've been working with Android since 2014, and I have been an Android developer with Alarm.com since 2014. I started as a junior developer, and I transitioned through all the senior roles, and currently I lead a team of 4 iOS and 4 Android developers. I'm telling you this because the inspiration for this talk actually came from code reviews and how code reviews, the effect that code reviews had on me throughout my career, basically in each stage of my career. So what do we have on the agenda for today? I divided the talk into 4 sections. We will start by formally introducing code reviews, what they are, why they are important, and why we should use them. Then we will talk about how code reviews affect junior developers or, pardon, fresh college graduates. So this section will be focused on somebody who has industry experience of less than 2 years. In the third section, we'll focus on people that have been in the industry for more than 2 years, senior developers or people that lead a team, and how they can use code reviews to grow their team, teach junior developers, and have them become better engineers. The last section will build upon the third section, and I'll share some of my practices some of my best practices that I have been using throughout the years. So what is a code review? I'll just read out loud the formal definition. It's an activity in which a developer, other than the author, examines a software deliverable for defects and improvement opportunities. So these are some fancy words for 2 things. Defects means catching bugs early in the development process. The sooner you catch a bug, the easier it is to fix it and the less costly it is to fix it. And code reviews are a great way of detecting bugs early in the process. And also, improvement opportunity means whether your code is following company standards or industry standards. You want to make sure that the code that's being submitted and merged is readable, testable, and that it follows the format that the industry provided. But code reviews are not just that. They are actually a great teaching tool if they can be used properly. I assume a lot of you use code reviews to train new people on your team, especially when you get a brand new developer. I personally assign them a bunch of code reviews so that they can get familiar how we do code reviews and get familiar with the code base. We saw the formal definition for code reviews. There's also a not so formal definition for code reviews. For those of you that do not know what the Boy Scout rule is, the Boy Scout rule says that you should always leave the campground in a better state that you found it. So just like with code reviews, try to do your best to leave the code in a better state than what you initially found. And code reviews are definitely not new. They have been used for some time in the industry. I'm not very religious, but I think this is a rare picture of the first code review. I believe this is Moses opening a pull request for the 10 commandments. And judging by the look on his face, he is going to receive a lot of comments, and it will take some time for this pull request to get merged. Going back to newer times, we can see Margaret Hamilton opening a pull request on GitHub. Recently, the software became available on GitHub, and I spent some time looking at it on GitHub. And a couple of interesting facts about this particular software is that there was one person who submitted the code. We can actually see her in this picture. I read online that it had 65,000 lines of code. However, those books look like more than 65,000 lines of code. So I'm not really sure how true is that comment. What I like to point out is that there were no files without comments, and almost half of the lines of source code were comments. And we are talking about a time when memory was scarce and precious, right? It was very expensive to store memory at that time. So every byte mattered. Makes you wonder how they reviewed that stack of books, right? Maybe perhaps like this, or maybe they didn't, right? I doubt that they didn't. They actually, like I pointed out, there were 6 people reviewing the code. So some of the things that I saw while reviewing the code on GitHub, there were plenty of comments, and the first two most interesting comments that I wanted to share with you were temporary. I hope. Well, obviously, whatever that code did was not temporary. So whenever you write code, no code is temporary, and write code with that fact in mind. And also, there was a function which was starting the main ignition of the rocket. And the comment above that function was "burn, baby, burn." What can we learn from these comments? Well, humor is essential for landing people on the moon, but it's also essential if you want to write code that's readable and code that can be understood by new people joining your team. And code reviews are a must. If these guys could spend time to review the code in 1969 while being in the space race and winning the space race, then so can you. So can your team spend some time on code reviews and make sure your code is following standards. So we see that code reviews are quite common and important for various reasons, but it's not uncommon for small startups to overlook the code reviewing process. You might ask, why is that? And honestly, I don't really have an answer. I've worked in teams long time ago where code reviews were optional. My guess is if you work in a startup, they don't have the time. They're trying to ship features and products as soon as they can. But if that startup becomes the next Google or Facebook, then they will have to pay technical debt that they never intended to pay. Since We defined code reviews and the importance of code reviews in your team. Let's talk a little bit about how new college graduates and new developers with less than 2 years of experience look at code reviews. How do they get affected by code reviews? So what can we say about new people, new fresh college graduates? Well, first of all, they're super excited, right? They've spent 4 years in college working hard. They spent a ton of money to get a college degree. And finally, it's time to cash in that college degree and make some money. In addition, they might land at a job in a cool startup where they have lots of happy hours, great perks, and so on. So they're super excited to be there. That's great, but they're inexperienced. College doesn't teach you about writing clean code or writing good documentation. You get tasks, you get homework, you get assignments, and as long as you complete those assignments, you're good. Your professor doesn't do any code reviews. And these guys are new to reviews. No school teaches you about code reviews, and no school teaches you about work ethics. So even though these brand new developers are inexperienced, you can find them on occasion writing a lot more code than senior or experienced developers. And that's possible just because the senior developers have other responsibilities. They have to plan, they have to fight with product and UX, they manage people, and so on. And all of these other responsibilities make their coding time smaller and smaller. Code reviews are one of the ways that senior developers can use to train junior developers and make sure that their code follows standards and that they're not introducing bugs. But most importantly, code reviews are the best teaching tool for somebody who's joining your team. With that, I would actually like to walk you through an example of my first code review when I was a junior developer at a small startup. The whole company had around 10 people. I want to walk you through this experience and show you the effect code reviews had in the beginning of my career. So at that time, this was probably a decade ago, there was no company policy for code reviews. You create a PR, it gets merged immediately. And after 6 months on the job, there was a new company policy that all the software has to be reviewed. So there were 2 senior developers who did all the code reviews in the team. One of them, I'm going to refer him as the bad developer or bad reviewer, had a very negative effect on my career, and I almost quit my job because of him and his code reviews. And the other senior developer actually made me excel in my career and love my job using code reviews. So after we received the new company policy, I was working on a feature and my ticket was ready to go. So I created a pull request and I assigned it to the bad developer. A couple of days pass, I started getting frustrated why there's no activity on my pull request. We needed to ship this feature fast, as soon as possible. So I reached out to him and I asked him to review my pull request. After a few days, I get a set of comments, and I actually wish I didn't, because he literally destroyed me. The code that I wrote at the time was not going to win any awards for the best code of the year, but I wrote a decent code. Like it was modularized, there were a few unit tests. However, the reviewer only pointed out the negative things. He didn't even say one positive thing, even though I worked very hard to write a unit test. So what he failed to realize was that this was my first baby and I needed some praise in addition to constructive feedback. Other things that he would do would be he would use authority to resolve conflicts. He would frame feedback as commands, and he would occasionally leave comments which were not related to my changes. So in short, I really felt like I was one of those chefs on the Gordon Ramsay show. And if you've seen that show, the Gordon Ramsay, who is this great chef, tries to help the other chefs, but the way that he provides the feedback, as shown in this picture, is not very constructive, nor does it help. So how did I take this? Well, of course, not well, right? I took it personal. I felt like I am being judged instead of my code. I felt threatened. Does this guy want me to lose my job? Like, what's going on? I even started not liking my job. I would wake up early in the morning, commute for an hour, work very hard, only to be destroyed in the code review and get negative feedback. So I was very unhappy. Couldn't he just give me a break? I worked very hard. After that small incident with the pull request, I did everything I can in my power to never assign another pull request to him to be reviewed. I started assigning my pull requests to the other developer that I mentioned in the beginning of the story. And this developer really changed the way I approach code reviews. Some of the things that he did different than the bad developer were he would tie comments to principles. He would say something like, can we use a factory method here and provide an example of what a factory method is? And this is very helpful. Examples are very helpful for new developers because they're inexperienced. Like textbooks maybe don't have examples for factory methods or singletons. He would not use authority to resolve conflict. He would actually ask for opinion from other developers on the team. And once we have a majority vote on what the right approach is, or what the correct solution is, we would go with the solution that has majority of votes. So that way he created an environment which makes people think that the team owns the code and not the individual. And in reality, the individual doesn't own the code. It's the team that owns the code. Because if the author of the pull request leaves the company, the team will inherit the existing code and they'll have to maintain it. And I felt included. He would, instead of framing feedback as commands, he would say something like, can we make this change? Do you think this is the right approach? So he created a collaborative environment, and that really helped me. So how did I take all of this? Of course, I didn't take it personal. I realized that code reviews are not a blame game. They're a tool that you can use to prevent bugs early in the process and learn from them, right? I felt included. I felt like I finally have a mentor that can help me learn. And I felt like I'm not alone. This bug is not actually my bug. It's a bug that the team owns. And if I cannot find a solution, then I can ask for help. I like this quote by Isaac Newton because it explains the effect that the good code reviewer had on me at the time and my career. Just because he used a very good approach in his code reviews, I started loving them. I started loving the code reviews, and I was looking forward to reviewing them. Later, as I progressed in my career, I actually started using his style of reviewing code and his principles. With that, let's focus a little bit on the good code reviewer. Like, if you've been in the industry for some time, what can we learn from the good code reviewer that can help you become like him? His code reviews were founded on 3 simple principles. People like praise, so give them praise. Whenever somebody on your team does something well, a unit test is written, an ugly old code has been refactored, acknowledge that and let them know that they have done a good job. Also, make sure that the new developers on your team know that the code is owned by the team, not the individual. So all the decisions that are made by the team, not by the author of the code. Love your developers, but do not trust them. I'll explain about this in an example a little bit later. Let's start with the first rule, and I'll walk you through a simple example that we can all relate to. You can see a picture on the left of me and my girlfriend. The picture was taken after we had dinner on Christmas. And imagine if this date was a code review. Imagine if I was reviewing my girlfriend during the date. What would happen if I only provide constructive or negative feedback and not say anything positive? Can you imagine how the date would end? Maybe something like this, or even worse. Having that said, try to find at least one positive thing to say whenever you do reviews. Even if I would provide negative feedback for only negative feedback for my girlfriend, our relationship will be hurt. Similarly, there's a relationship between the author of the code and the reviewer. So if you're the reviewer, try to find at least one thing positive to say. And there's always something that they did well. You can say something like, thank you for refactoring this code, great job on writing this unit test, and so on. The good code reviewer was a fan of President Obama's vocabulary. And actually, the very first thing that comes to my mind when I hear President Obama is this line: yes, we can. And I stress we in this sentence because this sounds like a cliche, but there's no I in team. And in your team, try to use President Obama's vocabulary. This is what the good developer did. He replaced the word you with the word we. So, for instance, a request such as, can you change this line of code? If you change it to, can we change this line of code, makes the author of the code believe that we are in this together. We are solving the problem together, even though all the work is being done by the author. But this word we actually creates a collaborative environment. And a collaborative environment is something that you want in your team. Love your developers, but do not trust them. This is what the good code reviewer used to do. Whenever he was reviewing code, he would pull down the branch locally. He would use both GitHub and the IDE to review it. And he would, of course, test the changes. It's very easy for somebody that's new to the company to overlook a use case scenario or even not be aware of some use case scenarios. For instance, localization or right to left language support. And the good developer would always use the IDE to do the code reviews in addition to GitHub, because the IDE can give you things that are not easily visible in GitHub. An example would be a function that's no longer used, or a variable name that's wrong. So the IDE is your friend when it comes to code reviews. Use the IDE. I actually want to share this video that I saw recently, and this video actually describes an environment where the team is not collaborative, and there's absolutely no trust in this team. Actually, on the contrary, there is too much trust in this team. Please let me know if you cannot hear voice.
I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm reading.
So I hope you like the video. This is the exact situation that you should avoid in your team. Neither the junior developer nor the senior developer knew what they were doing. I personally blame the senior developer in this case. It's actually his job to make sure that the new people on his team are delivering new features correctly and fixing bugs, as opposed to mistakes such as this one. This is how you misuse code reviews. The least amount of work that he could have done was assign this PR to somebody else if it was in an area that he didn't understand. It's okay to acknowledge that you, as a senior developer, it's okay to acknowledge that you don't know something. It's obvious that you cannot know everything, all the code in your app, but you can find somebody that knows that area of the code. So include him in the PR, and together try to review it. Now that we have the foundations of good code reviews, and that we introduce the principles of the good code reviewer, let's spend some time looking at some of the best practices that I use with my team, and practices that I have used throughout the years. Code is better than words. If you find yourself needing to write a lengthy comment, my approach is to write a short comment and replace the length of the comment with code. I would much rather leave a very short comment and write the code that I'm asking, write the code that I want to see, or even create a branch if the changes are bigger. And this really helps new developers. They can review your PR, and if you both agree on the changes, it's super easy to just merge them. So this way you are leading by example, and you show that you can write code and why this code is better. If the code is better than before, approve it. This is sort of a controversial rule, in my opinion. I think this claim is incomplete. I think it should say if the code is better than before, approve it, as long as you have a mechanism in place to address technical debt. If you just approve code that's better than before, but do not spend the time to refactor it later, then you'll end up with a lot of technical debt. What we do in my team is we have a so-called maintenance week. And maintenance week is 5 days. Each team member rotates in the team and spends time working on technical debt, working on things to refactor, working on adding unit tests. Therefore, if we receive a pull request and we need to ship the feature fast, however, it might not be all the I's and all the I's might not be dotted and all the T's might not be crossed. We approve the pull request, but we create a follow-up ticket that we address within a month or two. Promote clarity. Vague comments are really not helping anybody. If you want something to be changed in this PR right away before the ticket is merged, make that explicit. I think on GitHub, you can actually say that this comments, there's a tool that lets you specify that this comment must be addressed before the PR is merged. If you want something to be addressed later, if something is nice to have, but not a roadblocker, make that explicit. The author of the code might not know that your comment is optional. And finally, if there's a comment which is, hey, this would be nice to have, but it's not something that we really need, point that out, make it clear. If you look at the example given here, possibly can be changed to, I mean, I like SpongeBob, but what does he really want? Does he want me to change this? When does he want me to change this? Now, later? I mean, he is not even sure what he wants me to do. So don't be SpongeBob. His cartoons are great, but when it comes to code reviews, don't follow his example. The larger the request, the slower the review. Good PRs are adhere to a single responsibility, to the single responsibility principle. So the more focused your PR is, the easier it will be for the reviewer to review it. And things will move faster if you're only trying to address one thing as opposed to 10 different things in one pull request. Developers like to jokingly say fewer lines of code, fewer bugs, and no lines of code, no bugs. I agree with the first part, fewer lines of code, fewer bugs. If you get, and this is a real example from a PR that was given to me, 64 files change and 3,000 lines of code. And if this was given to me by a junior developer, how in the world did he expect me to review this within a workday or a week? Therefore, as soon as people join on your team, include them in PRs and tell them that it is better to have small focused PRs. If you want to know a man, walk a mile in his shoes. So if you ask the developer that gave me this PR, how in the world am I supposed to review this? He'll see that he has done a mistake and he'll split the PR into smaller pieces. Patience is a virtue. When it comes to hot fixes, do not rush the review. Make it clear that whenever you are reviewing a hot fix, you plan on taking your time. I know that production is broken, but production can stay broken for 1 more hour. if you do not do the review carefully, you risk potentially having another hotfix because you've been rushed and missed use case scenario. So make it clear to your developers that when it comes to hotfixes, you'll take your time to review them. And at the end of the day, they'll appreciate you for doing detailed code reviews and preventing further bugs that they have caused. Whatever you can automate, try to automate, especially things like code formatting. For example, public functions must have Java doc. For loop functions must start on a new line. All of this is something that the build can catch. And if the build catches this, you can focus on the actual changes. You don't have to worry about the semantics of the code. You only focus your efforts on the actual changes in the code. And this will also provide a unified code style. Your code will be the same, it will be readable. I love this rule because I've worked in companies where these checks are not automated. And I've seen from junior developers, every time I ask them to add a Java doc, they'll add the Java doc to the public function. Then there's another PR that they submit. Again, they added the public Java doc to few functions, but not all of them. If you make this change, you don't even have to worry about that. They won't be able to, the build will basically fail and they won't be able to merge their PR. So they'll be forced to make these changes. Engineering design doc. So I've noticed that for new developers, it can be difficult to understand the feature. Like what are all the use cases of the feature that we are trying to build? And new developers are eager to just jump in and write code. Let me use an example here to relate to new developers. If you are building a house, you don't just immediately jump in and layering concrete and putting bricks and also putting doors or windows. You actually hire an architect that creates a blueprint for you. And this blueprint tells you where the windows go, where you open a door. And before the workers start working, they just follow this blueprint. So with my team, we actually create a Confluence page. It can be a Google Doc, it can be a Word doc, it can be anything. And we build this document before we start writing code. We make sure that we consider all the use cases, such as localization, international support, accessibility. And once we have this document, once we feel that this document is complete, the author of the code or the owner of the feature schedules a meeting with 2-3 senior developers. And we discuss whether his approach is the best approach for the problem. We try to find flaws with the solution and identify them early in the development process. And this also helps senior developers. You'll get familiar with the feature. You will know what is being built and how it will be built, whether it will be 5 or 50 tickets. I think this is the last slide. We talked a lot about things that you should do as a senior developer on your team, but we didn't talk about things that you should avoid. I love GIFs, but I hate GIFs in code reviews. They are super distracting. I wish I was giving this talk in person. I would like to actually see your faces and see if you're reading the text or if you're just looking at the GIF the whole time. The same thing happens in code reviews. If I see a GIF, it's super distracting, and I'm looking at the GIF, not at the code. Approve something you don't understand. We talked about this a little bit before. If the changes that you see in the PR are in an area that you're not familiar with, don't just blindly type looks good to me, like the developer in the video. Try to find somebody who can help you review that pull request. And finally, this is one of my favorites. Try to avoid abbreviations as much as you can. They're really not helping anybody. Every time I see an abbreviation, the author of the code maybe saved 1 second, but he wasted a minute, for one of my minutes, because I have to look it up and see what it means. LGTM, that's widely used, that's okay, but ECT, I have absolutely no idea what that means, even though these examples, I've just copy and pasted them from actual reviews that I've done. Oh, I liked, this is the final slide. I would like to thank you guys for taking the time today and hear me talk, share my experience with code reviews throughout my career. With this talk, I hope I encouraged small startups to start reviewing each other code. If you are a junior developer, I hope you understand that code reviews are your best friends and a tool for you to learn. And for senior developers, I hope you like some of the best principles that the good code reviewer used. And I hope you start using code reviews to train and teach junior developers on your team. Thank you guys for your attention. I saw there were some questions in the chat. I'll try to answer them. No, but I do not. Let me know if there are any questions, guys.
Thank you, Ghost. That was a very great talk, good analogies, and a lot of good information to think about to take different approaches. Folks on the line, if you guys have any questions, please type it out or let me know. I can try to unmute you and you can ask your questions.
I muted myself.
Oh, cool.
Hi, Ghost. Thank you for the talk, first of all. I basically, I'm not working right now, but I do think that code reviews are very valuable. Do you know of a way that I could get like my code review? Because right now I'm kind of like preparing myself in order to for a portfolio in order to apply again for jobs. So, but I don't have anyone to review what I do. So I don't really know how well or bad I'm doing.
Is your work public on GitHub?
I have it private, but I do have a section that is public. I would have to invite the person to, the reason is that I don't want people to think that I'm coding a certain way at that period of time. I rather just put the projects that I really want people to see in my public section.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can, I'm not aware of, I don't want to say guns to hire to, in this context, people to review just random code. But if your work is public and you have some friends or people that would like to collaborate on your project, then we can definitely provide you with some feedback.
Okay.
And
Do you have any like other uh, pointers for me? As far I've been reading a lot of clean code and doing the solid and the dry principle. I also got the design by four book. Um, I don't know how else I can prepare best because all of this like falls into like code reviews because later on I'm gonna be reviewed on how well I'm writing the code and like if I'm applying a factory or a singleton.
I mean, I think there's a difference between practicing for writing code for interviews, practicing, and actual code that you write for an application or product. It's very difficult to get your code reviewed if you're just solving problems for a job interview.
Uh, I'm actually doing projects like portfolio projects, so I can just pick any project and I'll include just the API, the full stack, and yeah, you can definitely apply it there, but not for like solving. Yeah, like how are you gonna traverse a tree, something like that. Yeah, no.
I can definitely relate to what you're saying. I have my own projects in GitHub. They're public, and I try to follow good principles. I create a branch, I create a pull request, and then there's nobody to to review the code. But I'm not aware of just a place where you can ask somebody to review your code randomly. Your best option is to find somebody to collaborate on those projects with you. I don't know if the audience knows anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, this is Johnny. I just wanted to chime in real quick. I mentioned it in the chat as well, but finding a good open source project that you can contribute to, even in a small way, is probably a really good opportunity to get practice having other folks review your code.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate that.
That's a great call out, Johnny.
I actually had another question. I put it in the chat, but I'll just say it here. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on those times when you submit a PR and you get a code review and the comments are related to code that you didn't touch as part of your PR. How do you handle those?
As a developer, you just simply point out that my changes are not related to this code, and ask whether the reviewer wants you to address it in a follow-up PR. And if the answer is yes, you can just create a follow-up ticket and get to it whenever you can, or if you have a maintenance week, kind of like what my team does, you can address it there. But if the reviewer actually leaves is asking you to change something that's not directly related to your changes, that's wrong. He can leave a comment, it would be nice to change this, but there's a time and place for that change, and your particular ticket or pull request might not be the right place.
Awesome, thank you.
I have another question. Was the experience that you explained at the beginning, is that common? Or, I mean, to get like because I already had some few bad experiences, but not in the United States yet. But I'm wondering if they're common here.
It has happened to me in few different teams, and both in Europe and in the United States as well. uh, you'll see more often bad code reviewers than good code reviewers. People are busy. They, like I mentioned earlier, senior developers might have back-to-back meetings all day long. They have their own projects that they need to work on. So they try to review the code as good as they can and as fast as they can. And just because they are rushing, they might not be, they might not provide you with positive comments. They might just say, this is wrong, this is what you need to change. And that way they actually overlook how the author of the code receives that feedback. You know, if you've just joined the company, you might start questioning yourself if the comments are very harsh, like, what am I doing wrong?
How do you deal with that? I mean, with, yeah, like that situation.
That's a great question. Like in my case, I started, which is the wrong answer. I started assigning my PRs to a different developer.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
You go up and talk to them, or?
I don't know. Like I saw a change in myself. Like I didn't want to get feedback as commands. So I started phrasing my feedback on the reviews that I was doing as requests. I don't know. It's a difficult question. You could. I don't see anything wrong in talking to him as long as the intentions are good. If you really, you can say things like, you know, I don't feel like I'm being included in the team. I feel like the code that I write is not that good. He might realize that he needs to cut you some slack, or maybe change his vocabulary, or not be so harsh. You know, look through your fingers and sometimes merge the pull request, even though not all the comments are addressed, like some minor comments. For instance, you missing to leave a comment on a function. But if there's a bug, then he should be harsh.
Thank you.
Cool. Does folks have any more questions? Well, looks like there are no further questions. Again, guys, thank you very much. Well, this session was recorded and we will share with everyone if anybody wants to review, and we can post it on the Meetup channel as well. And please, if you guys have any questions, here's Gus's contact. You can reach out to him, and he'll be more than happy to help you. Again, thank you for joining.
Thank you, guys, and feel free to reach out if you have questions. And thank you, Vinod and Johnny, for giving me this opportunity to share my experience with the Android community in this.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yep. Thank you, guys.